Hi, my name is Shlok Srivastav. I'm the co-founder of Appreciate. I'm sitting here today with Mr. Gajendra Kothari. Gajendra is the MD and CEO of Etica Wealth. He has over 2 decades of experience in both the Indian and global capital markets. And he's a CFA holder who's very articulate about financial literacy and systematic investing. Gajendra, I have one question about you. You're famously known for the one idiot philosophy. This is very interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about what is this philosophy and why is it called One Idiot?
There was this movie called One Idiot. It's a free movie, 33-minute movie on YouTube that changed my life forever.
Okay.
It was made by Amol Gupte, who made Tare Zameen Par, Stanley Ka Dabba, Saina, the recent movie. And he's one director who has done a lot of work through his movies to educate people on different topic subjects. And this was one subject which was about financial freedom. And he said in that movie, India is independent, right? Why we should be dependent on anyone for that matter? So let your money work hard for you. And he was explaining this to a bunch of teenagers, 15-year-old, 18-year-old, that in 20 years time or 25 years time, make your money work hard for you so that you can be financially independent. And in 2047, we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. A Viksit India. Viksit India can only happen when all Indians can be Viksit. All Indians can be Atmanirbhar on themselves, right? And that is why One Idiot changed my thinking that if this boy in the movie can become one idiot, which means he was worth 100 crores. So the person, he was called one idiot. He was called an idiot by his by the society people. ये जो बच्चे थे, whenever this idiot used to walk, he would walk in a chappal and shorts, t-shirt. और वो भाजी वाले से, सब्जी वाले से 2 रुपए के लिए bargaining करता था. So all those kids who were roaming around in the society would think ये कड़का है, इसके पास कुछ नहीं है, 2 रुपए के लिए ये इतना करता है. And one fine day they come to know that he's worth 100 crores. Okay. And then they all feel very embarrassed about what they were. And they were calling him by the name Cockroach and this, to make mockery of him. He never minded that. And that is one lesson I learned. Right? Don't get swayed about what the world think about you. 100 crore का मालिक टी-शर्ट और शॉर्ट्स में घूम रहा है, हवाई चप्पल में घूम रहा है और 2 रुपए के लिए कर रहा है. But, and I, also started living that life in some sense. And I'll tell you in the course of journey that what I learned from One Idiot. But he made 100 crores and he's telling those teenagers that how he created 100 crores and how they could also become one idiot. और एक छोटा बच्चा था जो उनको ध्यान से सुन रहा था. और जब वो 8-9 साल का था, श्लोक, he was having 62,000 rupees corpus in his mutual fund by doing SIPs. और उसका बड़ा भाई was trying to take loan for David Guetta show, 3,000 rupees का लोन कहीं से मिल जाए, डैड से मिल जाए, कहीं से मिल जाए. मतलब उसके पास 3,000 रुपये भी नहीं है. And his younger brother had 62,000 rupees. I think that got me thinking. And in the end, it shows that boy ended up buying a Rolls Royce car at 45 age. That was a statement, right? Then I thought कि ये अगर बच्चा कर सकता है, तो मुझे भी एक दिन one idiot बन के दिखाना है. And all the more इसलिए because I'm into the profession of wealth creation for others. You are also into the same profession. हम लोगों को you are here to democratize finance, ये investments for the larger world. The same thing we are trying to do. But Shlok, if अगर हम लोगों को सपना दिखा रहे हैं और हमने खुद नहीं करके दिखाया उसी तरीके से, then we are kind of.
Where's the proof in the pudding?
Where's the proof in the pudding?
Correct.
So I took it on myself that I have to first become one idiot. I have to create 100 crores before I turn 50. Not that we would need 100 crores in our lifetime. Come from a very middle class family, 10-15 करोड़ बहुत होते हैं. But as a challenge, कि मुझे 100 करोड़ करके दिखाना है, बना के दिखाना है. The same power of compounding and growth. And then, if I can do it, then maybe lakhs of people get inspired और वो अपनी जर्नी शुरू करेंगे. So my mission is to create many more idiots in my lifetime.
So just building on top of this last conversation we had, I think the concept of SIP has started picking up quite well in India. A lot of people have also started thinking about SIP from a goals perspective. मुझे घर चाहिए, मुझे गाड़ी चाहिए, डाउन पेमेंट के लिए सेव करना है, बच्चे का एजुकेशन के लिए सेव करना है. But I think one place where I'm seeing there to be a lag is, while setting a goal is right, oftentimes I'm seeing young people setting up a goal as their first goal for, oh, I want to buy a car, right? We just spoke about priorities, right? Now, how do you help people to identify, to prioritize their own goals?
Yes.
Right? For somebody who's just come out of college, who's 22, 23 years old, of course they need to have fun. This is the first time they're earning money. I'm all for it, right? You have to live up to your world, you have to have those experiences. But when you're trying to create wealth, how do you prioritize between, should I save money for a car, should I save money for a house, or should I save money for all and allocate? In what percentage should I allocate? And that percentage should be based on priority of those goal items, right?
You raised a very valid point. First of all, 90% people don't think investments in terms of goals. They think investments matlab returns. Where can I get the best returns? And they will chase that without linking to the goals. That's actually a wrong place to start. The first place to begin is, what is my goal? See, I always ask people, what is the end use of money? The end use of money is to be spent. पैसा वही काम आता है, बट कहाँ स्पेंड करना वो तो क्लैरिटी होनी चाहिए कि ये मेरे पास 500 रुपए मुझे कहाँ से, फॉर विच गोल. When we tell our clients, investors, we say you have to find a balance. कल के लिए भी प्लानिंग करनी है और आज भी एंजॉय करना है. आई नेवर टेल माई इन्वेस्टर्स कि सारा पैसा आप कल के लिए डाल दो, रिटायरमेंट आपका ग्लोरियस होना चाहिए. अगर आज ही नहीं जिया आपने, और हमें क्या पता आप वो जिंदगी ना मिलेगी दोबारा. में इतना अच्छा डायलॉग है कि तुम्हें क्या पता कि तुम 40 रहोगे या 50 पे जियोगे. तो आई बिलीव इन दैट. सो यू हैव टू मेक अ बैलेंस. इफ यू लाइक स्काई डाइविंग, आई डोंट नो आर यू एन एडवेंचरस गाय और नॉट, बट इफ यू लाइक स्काई डाइविंग, आई से ये लाख रुपए आप निकालो इस साल, वेन एवर यू आर ट्रैवलिंग, go and use this, right? There are certain activities you can do at 40, 50, 45, 50 only. You can't do at 60, 65.
Absolutely.
But it can't happen कि आपको सब अच्छा लगता है. You can't say कि look, I want to dine at 5-star also. I want to go partying everything. I want to travel lot of stuff. I want a Harley Davidson bike. I want an Apple iPhone. बस ये सब खाली मूवीज में विशफुल थिंकिंग हो सकती है. Unless you are super rich and Ambani's son. We have to prioritize the resources. हम सब ने इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ा है. What is economics subject all about?
Correct.
Choosing priorities with limited resources.
Correct.
So अगर आपने मुझे बोला गजेंद्र ये 2-3 चीज आर नॉन नेगोशिएबल फॉर मी, लाइक हर साल मुझे ट्रैवल करना है 10 दिन, आई वॉन्ट टू गो टू सम हिमालयज और माउंट एवरेस्ट बेस कैंप, आई लव ट्रैकिंग, आई लव ऑल दिस, देन वी विल मेक श्योर दैट वी मेक यू डू दैट. बट देन आई माइट से लुक, आप छोटा सा, you can't afford an Apple iPhone 16 Pro. You'll have to compromise here. As long as you understand and do this,
right,
you'll be able to achieve it.
Great. So we've covered, starting off as a new investor, creating goals, setting priorities. Let's move on to somebody who's already investing, has been doing SIP for, let's say a couple of years now. I feel the one thing which is probably very important and a little more nuanced than just set it, shut it, forget it SIP, is the concept of capital rotation, right? It's very easy to set an SIP and the markets are going down, going up, great. That's the easiest way, in fact. And that's in my view, a very passive way and a great way to build wealth. But there will always be a set of people who are already doing this. They're already sitting tight. They already have SIPs. They're already stepping up their SIPs. But, they want that extra return. Maybe they don't need it, but they want the extra return because, sometimes it's, hey, my portfolio is doing this. I took this decision. And there, I think capital rotation is a very interesting concept, which not a lot of people are aware of. I feel like the audience will also, want to understand how do you rotate capital to be able to get a little more, right?
By the way, I always believe life is a single player game and investing is also a single player game. It's not a two player that I'm comparing my portfolio, and it shouldn't be, because you are a different person. You have a different risk profile. You have a different set of goals. I have a different set. So I can't compare my chapter 11 with your chapter 7 in the journey, So first of all, I should be able to reconcile that. Second is that as long as you know that this is your goals and this is the journey that you have to do and you stick to that SIP, keep on doing it. And you know the best way, Shlok, is to see your past returns. अगर last 3 साल 5 साल के रिटर्न आपके बहुत एवरेज से हाई दिखा रहे हैं, see the average returns Indian stock market or Indian mutual funds is giving is around 14, 15, 13%. If last 5 years showing 25%, I think that's a warning signal. ये पार्टी कंटिन्यू नहीं होने वाली है. So you should diversify. And for me, so I'll tell you the interesting bit of diversification. दुनिया के लिए डाइवर्सिफिकेशन क्या है? चूंकि मुझे पता नहीं कौन सा एसेट क्लास क्या करेगी, थोड़ा गोल्ड, थोड़ा इक्विटीज, थोड़ा यूएस इक्विटीज, थोड़ा डेट, सब कुछ ले लिया. कुछ अभी ये अच्छा करेगी, कुछ अभी ये अच्छा करेगी, मिला के 12, 13, 15% जो भी ये आ जाएगा. फॉर मी डाइवर्सिफिकेशन इज डिफरेंट. And Warren Buffett says diversification is meant for people who don't know what they own, right? और कौन सा अच्छा करेगा. But if you know what you're owning, you should not diversify. And that's a very important statement I'm making. I know what I'm owning. And that is why in the last 10 years, 90% of my money was Indian equities because I thought कि ये ऊपर जाएगा, and it did well for me. But now I know that if Indian equities have become expensive, and like it's not a recommendation, like 3 साल पहले 2 साल पहले चाइना का मार्केट क्रैश हुआ था, right? I felt it is a great buy. Everybody is rushing out of it, and it's a great buy because it's so low. तो I went and invested. 2-3 साल कुछ नहीं हुआ, and अभी लास्ट 6 महीने में जो 50% राइज है, because you bought so cheap, तो you are seeing that rise. I'm not selling right now because I think it is still a long way. जिस दिन मुझे लगेगा यहाँ यूफोरिया हो गया है. See, I'm not wedded to any asset class now. Earlier, I had this wrong vision about कि gold बेकार है. Gold doesn't produce anything. And Warren Buffett used to say, and long term में equities as such has beaten gold, but gold has not done bad, by the way. Particularly when you see in last 1 year जो appreciation हुआ है, and you see the long term track record. So now I have evolved in my view saying that I should start keeping an eye on gold. Today, of course, I may not be very bullish about gold, but a day when suppose I have maximum of my money in equities and equities is doing this great and gold is not doing that great because they work inversely, I will sell equities and I'll buy gold. Again, buy low, sell high. So I'll do now within Indian equities, US equities, international equities, sometimes China, sometimes Japan market, sometimes Brazil. I'll keep looking out for these markets and other asset classes like gold, silver, which is tradable. For me, liquidity is very important. कि मैं कभी भी बेच सकूं और कभी भी खरीद सकूं. For me, diversification or asset allocation works in that way.
So I think I completely agree with you on the concept of capital rotation. I have a slightly different way I do it, and I'd love to get your thoughts because of course you're an expert at this. What I typically do is, of course I'll have my SIPs. I'll not disturb them, and I typically never disturb them. Like you said, 90% of the times you should not disturb them, and you don't need to disturb them. But what I always do is I always have some, liquid assets available with me. And what I do with those liquid assets is the same concept of, buy low, sell high. There are multiple ETFs now available, right? For example, gold started going up, I bought gold ETF. For example, now we've seen Amazon, Google, all of these have dropped by roughly 20, 25, 30%. And therefore, there are tech ETFs available in the US. You can directly buy tech ETFs. And from an ETF perspective, it's very easy to track a sector and read up on a sector also and understand fundamentally, okay, this sector is not doing that great, or it's bound to pick up, and start investing in that sector. It's much more easier, much quicker, much faster, and easy to track versus an individual company versus an SIP. So, I typically load up versus disrupt any systematic investing.
Pretty much similar thing. I also do the same thing. 80% of my SIPs are generally buy and hold for long term. I don't generally flip SIPs and switch or stop SIPs. But क्या कर सकता हूँ मैं? So suppose I'll give you an example. Like 4 years back, I spot this opportunity in PSU space in India. 10 years, low, battered. I started SIP when nobody heard about PSUs. 2020 में. 2020 I continued my SIP. 21, 22, nothing happened. कोई return ही नहीं बन रहा था. and 90% people would stop their SIPs thinking ki this trade has gone wrong. 23 the PSU story began, 24 it went to the this thing. 4 साल का मेरा return SIP return was 56%. Crazy. And तब तक huge corpus I saw being made in my thing. I didn't stop my SIP, but I booked profits because it went beyond my 90% zone. And I redirected to a sector that has not worked in India in the last 4 years. So I'm a big believer of sector rotation on these extremes. Now, the only thing is that, and I don't do direct stocks, by the way, because for me, I don't know which stock to pick. You have to do, understand and do research. For me, picking sectors, picking countries or larger asset classes is far more easier.
But I think that's where ETF becomes very right. Because ETF is essentially tracking a sector or tracking a group of companies, all like-minded, and therefore you're not necessarily buying into a Google stock, but you're buying into a sector wherein easily accessible, similar to a mutual fund, but far more cheaper and cost-effective and easier.
So, you're right. So, you remember China mein, there was this big tech ban 3 years back. Sare ed tech companies and all lost 90%, Baidu and all. So, there was an index called Hang Seng Tech 30 Index, the top 30 tech companies of China. The high they made in 21 was 10,500. When the index came to 5,000 or 5,500, more than 55% crash. That's when I first invested. There was an ETF available in India and I bought that. और वो 10 रुपए की NAV में लॉन्च हुआ था, तो मैंने पैसे डाले. You know what happened then? वो 10 रुपए की NAV 5 रुपए आ गई. I lost 50% from there. So index came to 2,500 points from all-time high of 10,500. I doubled down on that. The only thing was that this will never become zero. It's the basket of 30 companies. And I don't have to do individual research also कि ये अच्छी company है, खराब company है. I loaded और आज वो जो value है, in last 1 year, Hang Seng Tech Index has given 100% returns. But I had to have 3 years of patience and all these investments have been rewarded with the risk I have taken. So I really like to do, and many people think this is risky. In fact, it is the safest. जो चीज 10,500 की थी आज आपको 5, 5,500, 4,000, 3,000 में मिल रही है. The risk reward ratio is now actually favorable. So I always look out for those opportunities. One fund I'll give to all our users. See, if all of us want to make 12, 13, 14% return, आप SIP कर लो, चाहे US के S&P 500 में ETF में कर लो, लॉन्ग टर्म में आप शायद 12-13% बना लोगे. बट अगर आपको 2-3% एक्स्ट्रा बनाना जो आप बोले हैं, that is when you have to do these capital rotations sometimes very smartly. Buy low, something which has not worked in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and sell high when something your portfolio will tell you ki boss 25% return CAGR for last 5 years, this part is not going to continue for long.
In these downturns, and this is with the new number of retail investors that have come in the past 5 years, this is the first time they're seeing this downturn. And I'd asked this question in the previous podcast as well. What is it, what is your advice to people who've come in for the first time, seeing this downturn? What should they do with their SIPs or with their current investments? Because I'll tell you what I'm seeing. I'm reading the Amphi reports and I'm seeing a lot of people stop their SIPs. I'm seeing a lot of people withdraw their SIPs, which fundamentally, in my view, is not the correct decision to take. What is your take on it?
So, see, I have always believed in life, the root cause of all unhappiness is the gap between your expectations and reality.
That's absolutely right.
All those people who have come in the last 4 years have never seen a drawdown in their life. Have always seen 25%, 40% CAGR in whatever they invested. So, उनको पता ही नहीं है कि खराब दिन क्या होते हैं. और अभी एक्सपेक्टेशन यहाँ बन गया है. तो लास्ट 6 महीने में अगर वो रिटर्न्स नहीं दिख रहा है उनके पोर्टफोलियो में, they want to experiment. अच्छा ये काम नहीं कर रहा, let me try this thing. They will keep on experimenting and buying and selling, which is the worst thing they do. Right? So again, if you are only playing a game for return sake, कि मुझे highest returns बनाना है, you will never win. You will get tired in that game soon. That bull market lasted for 4 years itself was a great thing. 2020 से 24 uninterrupted, right? So it has to, if you see, always remember, I tell Shlok this, अगर मार्केट खाली ऊपर जाएगा ना, आप बहुत स्लो पैसा बनाओगे, बहुत स्लो वेल्थ बनाओगे. बिकॉज आप SIP कर रहे हो, हर महीने आपकी SIP हायर लेवल पे बाई कर रही है, तो फिर wealth कहाँ बनेगी?
You have lesser and lesser units every time.
Exactly. If you have to make wealth, want markets to go down at least in the next 10 years when you are going to invest a lot of money. And this is a fundamental thing which people fail to understand. Retirement के लिए पैसा डाल रहे हैं या long term के लिए, what's the point of seeing 25% CAGR growth right now? You're not going to withdraw anything, it's paper profit. Might as well expect minus 25% so that you can put more money and buy more units. I think we all have to do a lot of work in educating this. So when people come to me and says मुझे बनाना है, I always tell, if you want to see your 100 becoming 200, first be prepared to see 100 going to 80. If you can't handle stress at 80, you will never see 200 in your lifetime. Because 80 का जब जैसे ही 100 आएगा ना, वो निकाल लेगा कि यार मेरा कैपिटल वापस आ गया, यहाँ से निकल जाते हैं. So it is like a spring, जितना आप खींचोगे उतना आगे जाएगा. And volatility is a great friend. I fail to understand जब आप SIP कर रहे हो, SIP is the best way to capture volatility. अभी मार्केट 20% डाउन है, खुद के पास पैसे होते तो आप टाइमिंग करने जाते, डालूं नहीं डालूं और नीचे जाएगा. SIP थी ना तो 1 तारीख को निकल गई, कल 1 अप्रैल था, निकल गई, आपको पता भी नहीं चला और इसीलिए वेल्थ बन जाती है.
I know you don't do direct stocks, but what is your view on global diversification, specifically having some capital deployed to US stocks? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. We were in a bull run. However, historically, we know that US markets bull runs typically last for 5.5 years. We've only just about reached the 1.5, 2-year mark, which means there is a potential for a 3-year further bull run. Now, of course, you have the tariff announcement that's going to happen. Today's 2nd April, so it's going to happen today, in fact. But there'll be all these announcements happening. Historically, also, in Appreciate, I saw a lot of customers coming down, buying NVIDIA stocks, piling onto NVIDIA, investing in a lot of US stocks, getting the exposure, because typically what they've seen is if you invest in Google, for example, which is a rather safe company, of course, it's 25% down right now. But historically, if you look at the past 10, 15 years, Google has always provided you roughly 20, 22% CAGR, right? Just that one stock. And if you have, and US gives you access to a lot of these companies like NVIDIA, like Tesla, like Amazon, all of these companies which have given you outsized returns. Now, if I were a, young professional, started my investment journey, I've been investing for 4 years, how important is it for this person to diversify into, let's say, a US stock market? And it need not be necessarily just potential stocks, it could be ETFs. But is the global diversification a necessity or is it a luxury?
It's a brilliant question. I think it's a necessity for 99% of the investors, for the simple reason because, as I said, I'm a professional investor. I understand much well asset classes, movements, and I've seen 20 years of ups and downs. So I can take a call on asset classes based on when they're cheap and expensive, and I can rotate, sector rotation. But for 90% DIY, we are all talking about DIY investors. They have no guidance, they have no experts, a personal expert. For them, natural diversification makes sense. And look, US today is 65-70% of the market cap of the world, right? US companies, US S&P 500. All these companies we are using in our day-to-day lives. तो पहले खाली ऐसा होता था कि US down जाएगा तो वो companies down जाएगी, but their 50% of the revenues are now being getting from India, China, and all those emerging markets. So they have become global companies. It's not just US companies. They're listed on the US market, but these are all global companies. They're much more consumed in India than sometimes in the US also. So I believe, and one other thing you should understand, they have a currency advantage in the sense 3 or 4% depreciation ka hedge hai. That is a natural inbuilt into US stock. So I believe by default, 90% of the investors can or should have 15 to 20% exposure to US markets from global diversification and currency hedge. और उससे क्या होता है कि इंडिया का एसेट क्लास अभी जैसे डाउन किया और यूएस ऊपर गया तो वो हेज हो गया है काइंड ऑफ थिंग. एंड इफ यू कांट अंडरस्टैंड स्टॉक्स देन ETFs are the best way.
No, I mean, if you just look at, I think you mentioned an interesting point about the currency depreciation that's happening. Historically, of course, the past 2 years, the rupee has depreciated significantly. However, historically, also, if you look at it past 20, 30 years data, on an average, 3 to 4%, the currency depreciates. In today's environment, when the interest rates are high in the US, your money market funds yield roughly 4.5%. And if you add the rupee depreciation of 3-4% on top of it, your safest returns that you'll get in the US is roughly 8%. And if you compare that with fixed deposits, wherein, all right, fine, you have access to 7.5%, but for fixed deposits, you're paying taxation on that interest that you're earning based on your salary slabs. However, because you're invested in a money market fund, you're going to be paying either long term or short term capital gain tax. And therefore, if you look at an 8% return and then do 12.5% long term capital gain, you're actually netting 7% safe returns on that money that you've deployed. I think these are opportunities which a lot of people may not be aware of, right? But I think doing some research, understanding the space, and I believe, the moment you start diversifying, you start doing more research, what else is out there, which is also very important to start, building wealth as well. You need to understand what sectors are, what companies are out there, what is the investment philosophy. So I think these opportunities exist.
I agree. So see, you have to remember one thing, you have to be smart investor at the one end and you have to be a dumb investor at the other end. Smart investor means looking out for good opportunities, right? And sometimes these smart hacks helps. It's a very brilliantly said, currency depreciating, US, this thing is giving 4-5%, and there's a good alpha and safe. It is the safest asset, right? 10-year, whatever treasury yield or government bonds you have. And so you should always look out for opportunities. Yet when you're doing, but doesn't mean you're keeping on flipping all the time. यहाँ से लिया, ये किया, वो किया, because the more trades you end up doing, the more mistakes you'll make. So it has to be well thought through. That is point number one. Secondly, you spoke about this currency depreciation and this thing. So a lot of these days we all want to go holiday. We're doing a lot of dollar trades, or we are doing a lot of investments. We want to send our kids abroad. And that is where this diversification also helps actually. Right? So, but I always believe that when you're doing this diversification, don't overpay on anything. Just because right now it is the fad of the season, right? It is the flavor. Don't overpay. That is going to bite you. So that is where I think and it's not a difficult research to do. Any asset class that you track, just look at last 1, 3, 5, 7 year returns. If last 1, 3, 5, 7 year returns are much higher than the average returns that asset class is given, that's some sort of a warning bell.
Correct.
आपको पता, मैंने कहीं बहुत अच्छी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी सुनी थी. पाकिस्तान स्टॉक एक्सचेंज 10 साल पहले काफ़ी वॉलेटाइल था, गिर रहा था, तो लोगों ने पत्थरबाजी शुरू कर दी थी. विच इज़ वेरी स्ट्रेंज, कि कैसे गिर सकता मार्केट, हमारे पैसे खत्म हो गए. तो पाकिस्तान की जो स्टॉक मार्केट रेगुलेटर है, उन्होंने एक रूल लाया कि मार्केट गिर नहीं सकता है. ओके, दे ब्रॉट दिस क्रेजी रूल कि मार्केट गिर नहीं सकता है, इट कैन ओनली गो अप. तो नेक्स्ट 40 दिन मार्केट गिरा नहीं, बट ऊपर भी नहीं गया.
It remained flat.
It remained flat क्योंकि कोई only when you go down then you will go up ना, bounce. तो then they realize no, it's a stupid rule. We
If it
can't
doesn't go down, nobody will buy.
exactly. तो फिर उन्होंने वापस वो रूल हटाया. So market has to go down to make money, right? So no asset classes, no tree grows to heaven. Okay, every asset class come back to cycle. Be aware of the asset class. So the first rule is markets will be volatile. Appreciate volatility. Second, markets will be cyclical.
Yeah.
And you can make money when they're going through a bad phase, and you should get out when they're going through an extremely good phase. If you can respect and follow these two traits and principles, I think you're going to do pretty well.
So I think that's a great way to end this podcast. We've had some learnings from Gajendra, which I think are very valuable. Not only for new investors, but people who've been investing for a longer period of time also. And of course, I am always available online. So is Gajendra. We'd be happy to answer any questions that people have. And please do post for any questions. We try and take out the opportunity to answer them. I think both of us are great believers on democratizing the finance community, enabling people to appreciate wealth. And honestly, I sleep very peacefully at night knowing that what I am doing is actually helping people appreciate or accumulate wealth.
I'm grateful that I also sleep peacefully. I always get 8 hours minimum sleep, you know, and that's great because that's recharge. But again, uh, at the same time, every day I get 3, 4, 5 messages that these podcasts or your story or your examples or your learning has helped change my life. And then I sleep with a far more responsibility कि कल वापस उठना है, कल वापस काम करना है. You still have lot more to do, right? And I believe that if God has given you that ability and capability to spread this, amplify this, and you've been a beneficiary of this, why not give back? And I think these platforms, and that's why I really appreciate that you invited me and we are able to do this.
No, no, we love having you over. Thank you so much for coming on the show.